I drive my bus in a busy city. That's why road safety is so important to me. I know that I must slow down and be extra careful when I make a wide turn. Buses need more room than cars. Everyone can help keep our roads safe. Next time you're driving, remember to give buses plenty of time and space to finish turning before driving ahead. Let's all plan to share the road safely. Learn how at www.sharetheroadsafely.gov.
Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle and is in surgery now. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's really great that you're getting him the medical care and treatment that he needs right now. These are three important things that I think you need to know. Injuries are unexpected and turn lives upside down. I'm Howard Ankin, and I'm here to help. If you or a loved one have been hurt at work or in a car, truck, or rideshare accident, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Thursday night, May 21st, 2026. As we bring you this new episode, I'm podcasting from Omaha, Nebraska. As we continue our coverage of the Big Ten tournament, you can read my report on SoxMachine.com and what I found interesting in the first couple of days of the tournament in the latest 2026 MLB draft report. But the competition ramps up as we now enter the quarterfinals, which means it's time for us to watch UCLA and Roch Cholowsky play. But while I've been watching college baseball, the Chicago White Sox continue their West Coast road trip. After losing 2 out of 3 against Seattle, the White Sox now head to San Francisco. We'll be recapping what happened in Seattle as the White Sox had an improbable victory and a tough loss. Preview the upcoming series in San Francisco, which is a team that seems a bit dysfunctional at the moment. I'll set the stage for the Big Ten tournament this weekend, and we'll take a look at the American League Central as the Detroit Tigers are free-falling, even though Tarek Skubal is trying to do everything he can to return. So let's get started. Joining me are Sox Machine Speed reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And gentlemen, tough series for the White Sox as they lose 2 out of 3 against Seattle. They're still above 500. They're 25-24, and that's still good for the 5th best record in the American League. But James, the White Sox got some tough injury news regarding Kyle Teel, and now Kyle Teel is moving to the 60-day injured list. Is there any concern now that we won't see Kyle Teel with the Chicago White Sox until, I guess now after the All-Star break, hopefully before the trade deadline in early August?
I feel like you're conflating possibly the 60-day injured list with this is starting a 60-day projection from here on out. Whereas the White Sox stated it as he will need to rest and rehab for up to 3 weeks before he can return to playing. So 60 days essentially procedural in terms of clearing out a 40-man spot, but doesn't necessarily add that to length of time. He will easily clear that based on how much time he's already missed, because you can pretty much start from, the beginning of the season with him.
Got it. So it's retroactive.
The 60-day, there's a limit on how much you can backdate a 15-day placement, but as far as qualifying for the 60-day, you can use what you've had until.
Oh, I'm an idiot. I'm sorry, podcast listeners. James is very right. So, okay.
Well, I thought you were more doing it intentionally because people are going to group, hearing those two things in your mind, in rapid days. Kyle Teel has injured his knee and his rehab assignment shut down, and he's been placed on the 60-day injured list. Inevitably, we're going to have readers kind of encounter that and conflate those two anyway. So we might as well address it right at the head. But yes, it does not. It's a 3 to 6 week. And they did specify that, not just he's shut down for 3 to 6 weeks, but that is how much time he would before he's playing games again. I would probably add a rehab assignment onto that projection. So your answer to my question to your question about do I fear he could be out until the All-Star break? I think there has to be some way of just yes, because 6 weeks would be, the top end outcome, but also he got hurt rehabbing his other right leg injury, and now he suffered 2 right leg injuries. Just in general, the idea that you have to be as much as cautious as you were with the last issue, and certainly having him, more or less a setback or at least a plateauing point of his last rehab phase. And now he gets this second injury on the same leg. At this point, you're just kind of worried about like how stable is that leg for the rest of the year until like everything really calms down, and what's the proper amount of caution that really allows him to like obviously build up to a very rigorous workload on his legs that any catcher has. So based on like the news and the timeline we've gotten, hey, he should be back by the All-Star break, maybe sooner, maybe next month. Based on, man, a lot of stuff has happened to this guy this year. And a lot of stuff has happened to him. This is essentially two things that have flared up while he's in the process of coming back from this grade 2 hamstring injury. Then, yeah, I think there's just an elevated concern of like, man, this guy has struggled to get healthy so far, that I think comes through with this, even if it's not, 60 days means 60 days from now in terms of when he should come back. So in terms of like, man, how long will it take? How cautious we need to be? And just how much before he really just has an off season are we going to get kind of building off last year's Kyle Teel? I think that's all a little bit up in the air until we can see him play again and like do it repeatedly and healthily. Though ideally, this is still less of a setback or less of an injury than the initial grade 2 hamstring strain was projected to be. And you hope that this is the one that actually does hit the timeline. I think it's natural to be like, man, this isn't going well. I hope it turns soon.
Yeah. And Rook Fletcher of CHSN tweeted that Teel is joining the team, James, I guess to join Mike Vassell on the cheerleading squad
and Tanner
for
Murray.
the White Sox.
Tanner Murray's
and
all
Tanner Murray.
Yeah, they're all the gang's all there.
I mean, Teal's basically been with the team all year. I mean, you saw like when she was doing it on the broadcast, like Teel was like in the camera shot while she was talking. She was like, Teal's joining the team in the Mariners. Like, hey, they are visually and audibly telling the story. But yeah, he's been with the team pretty much all year. And because of that, at least the optimism as he was heading out to Charlotte is this dude's been doing catching drills with Walker McKinvey all year. This guy has been hitting off the trajectory. That's with the team. That's another, benefit to him being in Chicago, especially when they're in town all year. So it remains to be seen, like, when did he get fully ramped up to kind of doing that stuff again on this knee issue. But that is supposedly or technically a benefit he's had just being with the team through the season. Also, just like it's been a shorter term thing. He's a key part of the group. He's someone you want in the pitching meetings, so he understands what's going on and like how you're attacking guys with people all the season. There's a lot of benefits to him being with the team where, yeah, I would expect him to be, unless he had like some sort of season injury where you see like pitchers just go off separately to rehab at their own facilities. But that just seems more like he's back with the team because he's not doing a rehab assignment in Charlotte anymore.
Well, thank you for entertaining my stupidity, James, and conflicting those two things. Jim, so with Teel out again, and we still haven't seen him play this season, this is becoming one of the what-ifs of the 2026 season for both the Chicago White Sox and Kyle Teel. But just focusing on the catching position offensively for the White Sox, tough series for both Edgar, Quero, and Drew Romo. Quero was held hitless. He went 0 for 5. Romo went 1 for 7. Other than the great home run from Edgar Quero and the 4 home runs that Drew Romo has hit, Jim, the White Sox are just not getting a ton of offensive production at the catching position. Should we just assume 1 through 9, whoever is playing catcher for that night for the White Sox, that I don't want to say it's a dead spot in the lineup, but they're just, again, they're not getting a whole lot offensively from Quero or Romo.
And they're not getting a lot defensively either. That's the troubling part, is that the White Sox, I think, are the worst blocking team in the league. You're seeing like a lot of pitches get to the backstop that aren't necessarily hitting the dirt. We've seen Romo have a couple of fastballs glance off his glove, whether it's reaching across or popping up to, try to throw out a base runner and the ball going to the backstop. Like just some kind of sloppiness behind the plate. And then when you have a series like, Quero going hitless and Romo having some bad at-bats with in key spots with runners in scoring position, you kind of look at a couple things. One is that, the Reese McGuire idea, which seem like out of order to me. Like I think when, Teel was on the original projection, to me, it made sense like, oh, go with Corey Lee just because what's it going to be 3-4 weeks? Turns out it's longer than that. But once you get to the point of like, yeah, Lee is still not what we want to be, and Drew Romo is, iffy too. That's a case where like, will somebody give up a Reese McGuire or a, other third catcher, journeyman, veteran type who knows his way behind the plates? Like that's one option. The other would be like looking at the Guardians and trading for Patrick Bailey. Like that would be another option of just like, ooh, he would kind of look good right now if you're going in all in on defense just to get something out of position. It's like I think the Guardians with their penchant for preventing runs, like it's an ethos. Like you can like look at Austin Hedges and Bailey and be like, man, that's kind of ghastly in terms of how they're hitting, but at least they're doing something right. At least they're asking something from them that they can deliver. And I think right now the White Sox are kind of stuck with, maybe Quero has the soft skills and the kind of the game management and such, and he's certainly shooting a shot with challenges. But I think overall, you're looking at the offense being basically worst case scenario. Defense has not really progressed much. I think the framing is slightly better, but part of that is challenges helping, because I think the successful challenges are counted as positive strikes for framing. I think that's how Mike Petriello explained it to me. I don't know if that methodology has changed since the first series. So like his grade is getting inflated, or at least it's being kind of shined by successful challenges, to where like not sure if that skill has really improved. And when you put both of them together, it definitely, I think when you're looking at the White Sox position, like you can see some positions where like third base a lot better than expected, first base better than expected, but then you look at like catcher, probably way worse than expected. So that's I think when you look at just where the White Sox are and where they could be, like you said, the what if question of just what if Kyle Teel were healthy and contributing to this team, like that is one where should they have trouble getting to the trade deadline and making a compelling argument to add, that would be what if Kyle Teel were around? I guess it's, it goes back to like the Robin Ventura ankle injury back in, I think, 1996, of just, they tried so hard without him. And, then the white flag trade happened. Kind of the same thing of just, that's, kind of the wrong timing for that specific injury.
James, any insight on how playing time could be divvied up between Quero and Romo? I think last year you mentioned that the pitchers liked working with Edgar Quero. Do we have any insight if they like pitching to Drew Romo?
Yeah, I mean, they've generally spoken positive of it. He's someone who's gets cited as being like a pro a lot, and talking to Drew about it a little bit, he just feels like he put it as a testament to like he felt like he made the right decision getting drafted out of high school, because like I've been making like pro like game plans for like pro baseball games for like 5-6 years now. Like I'm just cracking in the majors, but I feel like I've been doing this for a very long time. And even though he's coming from the Rockies and probably not the most advanced data there, when he was an A-ball and stuff like that, it sounds like he handles that well. And right now, I think, is it 5-6 series in a row of Romo starting 2 out of 3 games? I would largely expect that to continue, but they have one. Edgar Seattle series wasn't so much a testament to it, but he had 3 hits in that game. Beyond that, he had 3 hits in that game. It wasn't just like the solo homer, and he had some like hard contact in the Cubs series that like you could, or some flyouts, or even just like, well, he's getting the ball in the air. Like it wasn't something to get excited on its own. It's only more like after he hits the home run where it's like, oh, I guess there were some signs of this coming. And they've continued to like, even though his like numbers, I want to say the home run was his second hit against lefties all year, they've been still like, hey, if we're going to commit to giving you some playing time since you are here, we're going to do the let you pinch hit against a lefty reliever because that's historically what you've done. Those sorts of like going through the motions of like, hey, let's at least hand you some opportunities to get right or get back to being yourself, even if we're obviously functionally making Drew Romo the starting catcher. Does that waver a bit? Because obviously the Mariners series was like not great for Romo defensively on a couple fronts. And if Quero shows some offensive signs, I don't think it's like this rock solid thing where you wouldn't see Quero start like 2 out of 3 times at any point. I think the opportunity is there for him to heat back up. Gun to my point head, which is usually the tone of our podcast, but just for the sake of exercise, I would bet like Romo starts 2 out of 3 until something changes, or if we see like some more reason why that would flip. But I think the door is open. I think even with Teel, especially with Teel going down now, they've kind of done every dance they were willing to do outside of like, give Corey Lee a run. So I think they're going to, especially if he's going to give them some feedback and the way they've kind of backed him through a lot of questions about him. I think that door is going to become open for Quero to like heat up at some point and take some more of the spot again. But right now it's been like, hey, let's give you some at-bats against lefties. Let's give you one start, a series to lock in on or visualize on, to recall what he said about the Cubs home run. But I think it's waiting for Kyle Teel is still plan A for White Sox catching from here on out.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
We've all been there. You're away for the weekend. The big game is on, and you realize you're restricted from watching. Or maybe you're trying to check the latest lines on your betting app, but your local network is blocking the site. These are the ultimate unforced errors. You can prevent this from happening to you with IPVanish. IPVanish is the powerhouse VPN designed to keep you in the game no matter where you are. IPVanish helps you stay connected to your favorite team and streaming services while you travel. But it's not just about watching the game. For the bettors out there, IPVanish provides an extra layer of security and privacy that helps you access your account safely on public Wi-Fi. Plus, IPVanish is lightning fast, so you won't have to worry about lag during those crucial live betting moments. Right now, get a massive discount at IPVanish.com. That's IPVANISH.com to get started today. Secure your play and go to IPVanish.com.
Well, let's talk about some game situations in this series, especially on the game that happened on Wednesday, in which the White Sox lost 5-4. There's two situations that I want to talk through. Speaking of Drew Romo, missed opportunity. In the second inning, the White Sox had the bases loaded, nobody out. They didn't score. Tristan Peters struck out, and then Romo hit into an inning-ending double play, really bailed out Emerson Hancock. But Drew Romo was part of another run-scoring opportunity that failed for the White Sox. In the sixth inning, with the runners in scoring position, second and third, one out, Chase Meidroth is on third base. In the first pitch in that situation, Drew Romo looks like he's setting up to bunt, but then doesn't make contact. And then Chase Meidroth gets picked off at third base, gets caught in a rundown. And it's an ugly play, James. From your perspective, like, what happened there? Was that just like a missed squeeze play by Drew Romo, or Chase Meidroth just got caught napping at third base?
Appear to be a safety squeeze, and
okay,
they haven't really run many true suicide squeezes under Venable, if they have. And Meidroth's in a tough place there, and it's his fault, and he's the one who like owned up to it post game, but also you're stuck between, you want to get as good a jump possible to make the safety squeeze work, and you are also responsible for getting back if it doesn't actually go down, because it's not it's not a suicide squeeze. It's not like all in commit no matter what, and whatever happens. So he's in a tough spot where he's really trusted to make like a great read, and he was leaning towards the side of trying to get home, and it didn't get down. So there are two things that I think are interesting about it. There's more just like, this is something that bad can happen. Everyone knows, like, my whole issue with bunts is not like necessarily even the strategy. It's around like they're often as much of a toss up to execute as just hitting with runners in scoring position. Does the double play where Romo cannot get you the productive out swinging influence the decision to go into safety squeeze later in the game a little bit? And Romo's like shape of his production has been it's sub 200 batting average right now with like these bursts of power that make it, worth waiting for out of the 9 spot, but it's not necessarily it's funny because his profile is flipped. He used to be the contact heavy guy. Now he's become more valuable as a less chase guy, more power hitting, but he's not as maybe nimble as far as like these sort of situations for bat handling that you go to this idea of doing a safety squeeze. The other thing is going into the season, and this might lead into larger points about how much they struck out this weekend. It's like, we don't have that much slug. We're going to have to create runs however we can get them. We're going to need to manufacture. We're going to need the small ball. We're going to need to bunt. Tristan Peters, you're going to bunt more than you ever have in your life. Okay, coach, why not? Those sorts of things. And is that still the residue of that? Because now, especially with them having success in the manner they've had success, we're a quarter into the season. I think we're probably in a point where we can talk about this offense as in clearly demonstrated something different than we expected, which is they're the most, first or second most home run reliant offense in the league, and they're hitting a lot of homers. It looks like they have plenty of slug. It's pretty concentrated, but like their main means of scoring is via the long ball. Now, if only because I've read so much like beat writing about the Yankees over the years where their stupid fans are complaining about, we hit too many homers, we're too reliant on homers. There is still, when you are that sort of offense, obviously it's going to be a bit more boom and bust in shape. And during the dry spells, which you'd expect in a series in Seattle, you still at least want to have that capability to manufacture runs or produce runs in a way outside of the home run that I don't know if the White Sox have necessarily demonstrated that much. And are they right to try to get those options or exploit those options at the end of what's basically be 1.5 games of low scoring up to that point? Or should they stick with their identity and just swing away the whole game and maximize their opportunities and say like, hey, Romo's hit 4 home runs. Let's give him a shot to break the game open. I bet they're still leaning towards like, we want to be able to have different clubs in their bag. That's kind of what you hear from Fuller and Showman, from those types a lot. And, it's been only maybe 1 month of hitting like the 27 Yankees. And I don't know if they're like, we're going to be like this the whole season, but right. It is something to like think in, like, are you guys just like a ball go far, team go far offense and need to embrace that? Or is it like, you just want room for the manager to feel the situation and say like, hey, this is a 2-2 game late and I'm with the bottom of my order. I'm going to try to make some things happen. And does that need to still be part of the identity? Or is that something that they can do reliably and not, get picked off there?
No, really good analysis there. Thank you, James, for breaking that play down. The other decision, Jim. So Jordan Hicks replaces Sean Newcomb in the 7th inning. Newcomb already allowed a home run, so Seattle's up 3-2. And Randy Arozarena is batting with Julio Rodriguez on second base because Julio, I think, hit a double off Newcomb. And you got Rob Refsnyder on deck. And Refsnyder is batting barely over 100 this season, Jim. He's really struggling offensively. First base is open, but instead of walking Randy Arozarena hits a back-breaking 2-run homer to give Seattle a 5-2 lead. In hindsight, we can easily say that was a dumb decision by the White Sox. But I know how much Jordan Hicks has been struggling this season, Jim. Do you like the faith and confidence Venables showed in Jordan Hicks by challenging Randy Arozarena in that situation?
Well, it's kind of funny. I was looking at Hicks's win probability added, and it's actually positive for the season. Like, I was kind of surprised by that, thinking that he's had some, especially like the 4-walk one, that was very memorable, but he's had some innings where he's come through as well. So like, they had some options for, go attacking him with a thought like he just might walk him anyway. Like, given his control issues, that just might be attacking him and trying to be very cautious or live on the edges or not locate a sweeper might result in a walk anyway. So, given that he hadn't allowed a homer all season, that certainly was, even though Arozarena is a threat, like still the least likely outcome that could have resulted, I think, from that combination of hitter and pitcher. But yeah, I think, it's kind of odd, or I would say like maybe spiritually opposite of like playing the infield in. Like, you would think that you would, backfill first base and pick on the weaker hitter that they had picked on before this series, especially with given that third base was open as well. So you don't have to worry about loading the bases for Jordan Hicks to throw strikes all of a sudden. It would be a case where you still have one more walk before it starts getting hairy. But, I think Hicks probably just the way he doesn't necessarily give up a hard contact or loud contact. It's like he has a weird profile of walking too many guys and then giving up some shanks as well as some hits. Don't exactly know what you're going to get from any given outing that, when he came in, I just thought like, well, I hope he doesn't, I guess the homer surprised me. I'll put it that way. Of just like, oh, I didn't see that coming. That's baseball for you. It was more of a reminder of baseball's capriciousness versus any kind of strategical blunder. But I think overall, probably Refsnyder if you are going to go all out in other areas to try to cut down a run. I think that's maybe a little bit incongruous with just how the idea of pitching to Arozarena is.
Yeah, I don't know how Venable feels about the intentional walk, James. Have you ever asked him, like, is he vehemently against the idea of putting free runners on the base?
I believe no. I mean, certainly it's into their calculus about like what sort of probability that would produce, but I would be surprised if they haven't intentionally walked someone this year.
I was just wondering if that's a philosophy. That's, again, I'm still learning as far as when it comes to Will Venable.
They have
the team's winning
9,
now,
so I think they're
issue
open to it.
Okay. Hicks has 2 of them, so Hicks has done it before.
It's all the relievers. I mean, I guess that's to be expected, but
I guess
100% is still high. I guess if they have a starter in the third times of the order that they're iffy about facing opposite-handed guy, they're just pull him, not do the intentional walk.
That's true. Or Aaron Judge is looming. There's some pretty big series coming. You could just have your starter.
Who would you pull? Who would you intentionally walk Aaron Judge? Like if it's K, like at a point where you don't want him to face Aaron, that's probably just the end of his day because you're not having him face him like a third time, probably under any circumstances. And if it's already shaky enough to do it when a second time, maybe that's it already. And similar thing with Schultz, probably.
Yeah, well, that was the 2 situations that I wanted to hash out with you guys. It's kind of nice on the podcast to pull these 2 situations and break them down on a micro level. We've been talking so much macro over the years because it just hasn't been a very good team. And now the team is winning, and it is a tough loss. It was a very exciting win on Tuesday. Let's be honest, a bit on the lucky side. Jim, to your point in our previous podcast, the White Sox are proving that they can kick out. And that was a great example. I thought they were going to lose 1-0, but they found a way in that 9th inning to kick out and steal that victory. And the way that Grant Taylor looked, Jim, James asked Will Venable on Sunday about the closer situation. And I got to say, the way that Grant Taylor looked, Jim, maybe we need to revisit that conversation because, damn, that looked good.
Yeah, I think it makes a very simple argument for a traditional save situation. 9th inning, up by 1 run. Both are available. Who do you pick? And Taylor would seem to be the obvious choice. I think, maybe the only reason why you don't paint yourself into that corner if you're Will Venable is if that situation arises in the 8th, where you have lefties and righties, and you'd rather have one guy face the lefties and one guy face the righties, then you'd rather have Taylor in the 8th and Dominguez in the 9th. So probably wants to keep both options open. Also helps take the stress off of both pitchers when you don't have them annoyed as the closer, as we're seeing with Dominguez being the guy kind of being targeted for when he blows a save. It's just like, how long does this keep going on? Versus if they're not named a closer, then they can always say, well, you might not get the next one. And nobody really thinks too much about titles or feelings or anything like that. So probably open-ended, I think, when it comes to save situations. But I think you probably see Venable tread a lot more carefully around lefties, knowing that Taylor can look that good against either side, and then like try to put Dominguez in more flattering situations, I guess, for ninth innings when there is no backup. Like if you can have Dominguez in a situation, you can have him, lefties in the picture if you can have some backup if he starts like missing. But yeah, it's just, I think when he's the last line of defense and when he has these innings where he's turning it into adventure and perhaps inviting the winning run to the plates without the offense having to do anything, that's probably when you wish Taylor were the one handling it. So yeah, I would imagine that the calculus is pretty clear on his side, but I think baseball is going to a model, and not just Venable, but other teams as well, trying to keep leverage in mind and lineups in mind and handedness in mind. So he's not the only one doing this to where, there's just not one anointed closer hogging 95% of the save situations.
And then James Colson Montgomery, he had a really tough series. He went hitless. He went 0 for 10 against Seattle with 7 strikeouts. Anything in particular, a pitch type that was giving Colson Montgomery fits against the Mariners?
Seemed like elevated four-seamers was their repeated menace there. When I was writing about the home run barrage on Sunday, I was like reminded of the like placard that is on like the wall in the White Sox spring training complex, which very much, if it wasn't handwritten by Ryan Fuller, it reads like it was dictated, but it talks about like the ideal launch angles being between 5 and 30, which is just kind of a truism about like as far as like hitting results. But I think everyone but Vargas, the home runs from Saturday that I was writing about, I was looking at like them on StatCast, like these 37, 38, 40 is like, these guys aren't hitting for ideal, like on a line that happens to get out. These are lofted swings. And then, as we're watching them get picked apart a little bit by Brian Wu and Bryce Miller, who have really good four-seamers on consecutive days, Jim's like saying, hey, it seems relevant to mention they have the steepest attack angle in baseball. And it's like, yeah, we've been enjoying all the home runs, but and not like this is bad or secretly they should stop hitting home runs. They should all flatten their swings. But part of why this can kind of go up and down is that you'll see teams, or you'll just run into teams that have a couple guys with great four-seamers like the way the Mariners have. Or you can get a little homer happy after during successive stretch, and you just see like the angles get a little bit steep over time. The whole season's guys kind of like drifting in and out of physical habits. But it seems like a little bit of the reckoning or recalibration moment of them seeing a lot of guys who can throw up shoot fastballs at them and see swings that are kind of geared for punishing belts and below, and we're able to kind of eat at them a little bit. I think it's also just like the nature of Colson as a hitter is, he's trying to drive the ball. He'll tell you as much. Like that kind of hitter, it's a big leverage swing. It's going to be built for loft to a degree. Always, he's going to have stretches where he carries you when he's hot, and he's going to have stretches where he strikes out a lot when he goes through like a rough time. It's not a swing guaranteed to like run into hits even when he's cold. So yeah, there's some trend pieces that go into like why it spiked here. It's also just like he's going to run into these over the course of his career and probably still be a valuable hitter over the course of the season, even if like his worst series look a bit worse than others.
Yeah, I think the high fastball then compounded with him chasing low, because I think, at least watching him, it seemed like he was ready for anything thigh high or lower to pounce on. And so especially I think Wu was doing a good job of just like throwing sliders below the zone, and he would chase there. So he chased high and then like trying to take high to chase or set his sights low. And then what he was getting low wasn't a fastball. And so either it'd be a swing and miss or like a foul that just got him in a worse count to where he had to be even more defensive. And yeah, just I think momentum kind of snowballed on him to where just nothing looked good.
Well, hopefully he can flush it as the White Sox continue their West Coast road trip, as they'll be heading to San Francisco to take on the Giants, but they're still 25-24, a winning record as we enter game 50 of the 2026 season.
Just watch him on video. He just carries himself, like a professional. He doesn't get sped up. He just stays the course, I think. And the moment's never too big for him. I think he's worked extremely hard. I heard what Coach Savas said and some of the stuff they did with some of the interviews, and I think, he's a 1 in a million player, and we'll be glad he's gone next year. Thank goodness for the draft, and he can go do his deal, make his money. But all those guys. It's not just him. All those guys. That team is as good as anybody in the country, and we're excited about the opportunity to play those guys tomorrow.
That audio is from Purdue head coach Greg Goff as his Boilermakers advanced to the quarterfinals. Tough start for Purdue in the Big Ten tournament as they played in the Tuesday 9 a.m. game, very early for baseball. And they lost to the 12th seed, the last team into the tournament, Michigan State, which Michigan State, they are the Cinderella. They're still in it all the way to the quarterfinals as they beat Purdue in the opening game 8-4. But Purdue beat Illinois 3-1 and then just had a resounding win over the 8th seed Iowa 8-1. And we're talking about Purdue because they're going to be taking on the number 1 seed UCLA on Friday at 1 p.m. Central Time, which means it's Rock Watch for White Sox fans. I'll be there taking photos and videos of the potential number 1 overall pick. Cholowsky crushed in last year's Big Ten tournament. We'll see if he could do it again. There are 4 conference tournament games scheduled for Friday, May 22nd, and then the semifinals on Saturday before the championship on Sunday. Then the entire sport is on to the postseason as it's the NCAA Regionals announcement early in the week, and then we are officially on the road to Omaha with the postseason beginning next weekend with regionals. So I have lots more about Cholowsky and my other thoughts on potential MLB draft prospects, not only for 2026, there's a couple for 2027 as well that we can start tracking from this Big Ten tournament. You'll be able to watch those videos and read my recaps on SoxMachine.com. But the Chicago White Sox are in San Francisco this weekend to face the Giants. The Giants are 20-30 this season. They're 4th place in the National League West. They're only a game ahead of the Colorado Rockies for last place. The Giants are 11 games back of first place, and they're 8.5 games back of the wild card. They have lost their last 3 games. They are 4-6 in their last 10. Your probable pitchers for this series, late start on Friday nights for those in Chicago. First pitch is at 9:15 p.m. Central Time. Davis Martin will take the ball for the White Sox against the Giants starter Trevor McDonald, who's been good in his 2 starts. He has a 2.37 earned run average. Saturday and Sunday, these are afternoon games at 3:05 p.m. Central Time. Eric Fedde takes the ball on Saturday against old friend Adrian Hauser. And then on Sunday, it's Noah Schultz against Robbie Ray. And I think for this upcoming series, James, I'm focusing on Eric Fedde because other than the home run, I think Fedde's been holding his own. But the home runs have been an issue. He's yet to win a game, which I know win-loss record really doesn't mean a whole lot for pitchers, but being 0-4 is not a great sight for Eric Fedde. But now pitching in San Francisco, that should help alleviate some of the concerns because of the ballpark with home runs, right?
You would think. Yeah. I think in general his actual hard contact rates are not guy who should have 12 home runs or however many on his tab. But it's not in a great park, and obviously I think not obviously, but at least my speculation is that throwing as many sweepers that misfired ones or hung ones maybe can go a bit farther than challenge fastballs at times. Nothing to necessarily validate that, but yeah, certainly the Giants offense not being good up to this point, playing in a spacious ballpark and not taking walks, which I think is another it's his walk rate's fine, but it's not elite or not what it was when he was at his best. Those are all good things to mitigate, since the thing that I've probably not seen and wouldn't necessarily expect to start seeing has been a ton of strikeouts. So taking the kind of other things that are harder for him to control out of the picture, hopefully it does well. But the biggest thing, he certainly claimed that the cut on his finger during the Sunday start against the Cubs had no effect. But how much of that is pro athlete doesn't want to make excuses, or something that can be proven out by him bouncing back and looking better, or having better commands than he did on Sunday. That's also probably the thing I would watch for on top of just environmental factors.
And we mentioned, so hopefully the stadium suppresses home runs for Eric Fetty, but to a point that you made earlier in the show, James, this White Sox offense is so reliant on the home run. I think that's going to be another aspect when we recap this series on Sunday night. Can the White Sox score enough runs to support the pitching staff without the home run?
Or can they just hit home runs in San Francisco because they have, maybe Miguel Vargas is like your home run hitter of a type that might get affected by environment, but Colson and Murakami kind of have could leave anywhere sort of nature to some of theirs. Yeah, that's
true. Yeah, they got the juice. They got the juice. Let's see if Murakami can hit one in the bay.
Well, McDonald is interesting just because he has a 99th percentile ground ball rate, 65%. Sinker. So we're talking about going from high fastballs to going to the opposite with McDonald and Hauser, who are more sinker reliant. So could maybe play more into their strengths, or they could top a lot of pitches and chop them right in front of home plate and just have a lot of routine 4-3s. Either one's in play, but it certainly will be a recalibration based on just where they're looking in the zone, unless the White Sox weaknesses force the Giants to do something else. But based on, especially McDonald, just the sinker, can they lift it? Time will tell.
And then I think the other aspect of this series that I'm curious about, because this would be the first time, Jim, that we watch the Giants under their manager, Tony Vitello. And Jim, we talked about this when the Giants hired Tony Vitello, and he's having himself a rookie season managing. And I say that in jest. The transition might have been tougher than anticipated for Tony Vitello. It's still early, Jim. I think Vitello is a very good college baseball coach. But now I'm wondering, just his press conferences during spring training, his press conferences as of late after losses for the Giants seem to be eating at him. I wonder, going from college baseball to Major League Baseball as a manager, is a bridge too far?
Especially in a high leverage situation. I think it reminds me a little bit of Pedro Grifol, of just, I don't think he was the right guy at any time, just based on how poorly he handled the pressure and just kind of the public facing parts of the job. But he was especially wrong hire for where the White Sox were with the previous core about to collapse, a bunch of bad vibes, or just players who were part of an old hiring process, and the front office is on its last legs, and the players who are released aren't getting many major league opportunities elsewhere. So the talent wasn't there, or the talent that was there was kind of like a Potemkin village of just they're not actually good. But also they're kind of fixed in place with the contract. So what are you going to do, Pedro? It was just a real mess. And I think, we talked about Ron Washington being the hire. I don't know if Washington would have been the guy either, but at least he would have had some of the gravitas of and just the track record of being somebody who could coach up guys to where, if you can't coach them up, maybe they don't want to be coached. And then you can at least point the finger at the players. And even Washington, I think, is the guy getting Luis Ariz, turning him into a pretty good second baseman when he looked like he was DH at most. So he still got it in that regard. But I think with Vitello, just, it's pretty veteran clubhouse, a lot of money spent in that lineup. But also some kind of vestigial effects of just the Giants looking for better value than really flexing the financial muscle in their previous administration. They have some thin spots in their lineup and rotation as well, to where it's a kind of a needle that a manager has to thread. And so to go for a college coach who has no major league experience, being the guy to do that and being very open emotionally, I think that's probably the most striking thing about him, is just he's letting it all out in terms of how he's viewing it, and how emotions are kind of getting the best of him. And Reminds me a little bit of Joe Madden, like when he was at the Rays. Like he was a good fit for the Rays, low pressure environment, a lot of young players. Could take his unorthodox approach and they would have to listen to him, but also they responded well to it. So they grew well together. This doesn't seem like a lineup that can grow with them. Like it's not a forgiving division. It's not a forgiving group of talents. Like the results have to be immediate. And then you have like the Bryce Eldridge stuff, which is also weird in terms of like, it's not an environment where young players can grow apparently. So I don't, it seems like a short shelf life. And I was talking with a couple of UT fans at the curling club who were kind of watching Vitello in San Francisco and saying like, yeah, is Arkansas going to hire him? Like that was their thought. Like if he goes back to college ball, like Arkansas looks like they would be the ones that would spend the money for him. So like, be funny if that comes up stronger and stronger, kind of like the reverse Bill Belichick of just like, it's not going well. Well, you want to run back to the NFL? Yeah, it might be the other direction for Vitello.
Well, for our podcast listeners that are NFL fans, I think that's what happened with Nick Saban. Like Nick Saban randomly was the Miami Dolphins head coach. And then he went back to college football because just didn't work for him. And I do wonder if, again, I think it's a bridge too far. It's very different sports. When you're the college head coach, you are the CEO of that program. When you're the manager of an MLB team, you don't have that much power, right, James? Like Will Venable can put in his 2 cents, and the White Sox, seek his advice as far as like what kind of players to bring in to the clubhouse. But ultimately, that decision is still.
And I certainly could see Will. Right now, they're just like in too much happy alignment to really like parse it too much about like where the power is being wielded.
Sure.
So, like Alex Cora is probably a cleaner example of like a manager really being able to amass power. Certainly one that like creates so much public cachet that they transcend multiple GMs, even if one of the GMs still winds up firing him at the end. That's probably a good example of like a guy whose influence or desire to get certain players or certain types, was at least supposed to ring through. The idea that obviously he wasn't able to get Alex Bregman or was consulted enough. We could go on hours on Red Sox drama. Like obviously there are limits to it, but I think it's possible. Yeah. It's hard. You wouldn't think a first year manager coming in from college under a franchise legend, new GM, who's been whacking plenty of franchise mainstays left and right. You wouldn't think that would be nearly as much power as or influence or just like kind of clarity and decision making that you have as a head coach of a college program.
Yeah. Well, we'll see in the decision making with Tony Vitello. I think this is one and done for Vitello, and I think he does return to college baseball. Who knows? He might resign during the season. We've seen coaches before, Jim, go back to college from the major league ranks. We'll see what happens with Tony Vitello, and hopefully I have a good feeling about the White Sox this weekend in San Francisco. So hopefully they win this series and they conclude this West Coast road trip, at least going 3-3 in these 6 games before they head home for a very key homestand against the Minnesota Twins and the Detroit Tigers with a very early start on Monday, Memorial Day, around 1:10 p.m. Central Time. That start on Monday against the Minnesota Twins. We'll preview that homestand in our next podcast episode. But before we sign off in this show, instead of taking a look around Major League Baseball, let's take a look around the American League Central, specifically the Detroit Tigers. Tarek Skubal is shockingly throwing bullpen sessions despite having the loose bones in his elbow and having that procedure. He is rushing to return to the Tigers, and the Tigers could use him because ever since Skubal went on the injured list, Detroit is 2-14. They are now 20-31 on the season. That is the second worst record in the American League. They are 6 games back of the Chicago White Sox, not the Guardians, the White Sox. They are 6 games back. And to James' point, they just got mopped by the Guardians. James, Detroit has a lot of talent. And yes, this 16-game stretch is ugly, but it can't be all on Skubal because he only pitches every 5th day. They're really struggling on offense. So when I'm watching video, James, on social media, Skubal throwing bullpen sessions, I don't know what his intended target is. Is it to come back and be the hero and inspire his teammates to start hitting better, even though he's a pitcher? Or is he rushing back to let me prove to everyone that I'm still Tarek Skubal, and if this team doesn't turn it around, I can get traded to a contender?
I think that just his walk here would be like enough motivation from his camp to probably get him right. And theoretically, like it dovetailed, like I'm sure there are people in his camp who want, or like their chief motivation is getting him right. Or it's like, hey, if you take this nano needle, you can really get back fast. But I'm sure it's certainly also like a big benefit or motivator to Skubal that he wants to get back for this team that he's pitched for his entire life. So I wouldn't like put everything that he's doing to rush back as being underhanded. But to your point, it's not Gary Carpenter taking swings to work his way off the injured list, which is something they really need. Not that like Javier Baez has been particularly good, but obviously he's been hurt a lot of this time. They dealt with a lot of injuries, and Spencer Torkelson has hit home runs again, but he started out really slow. Colt Keith has not been like kind of stepped forward to be a main like middle of the offense guy that they needed. Gleyber Torres is hurt. So yeah, to your point, the help that's coming to save their offense is more like what seems in peril and not have as many updates of like hope on the horizon as Skubal, which obviously helped because Framber Valdez can be a little up and down. Jack Flaherty certainly be disappointing. Their rotation has its own problems as well. They probably don't want to do pitching chaos all the time, even if it seems like it.
Yeah, it's too early for pitching chaos. You still got a long way to go. But that's one of the bigger surprises this year so far, Jim, is just how Detroit has been faring. But the other surprise, sticking in the division, Cleveland. They've won 6 games in a row. They have a 3.5 game lead over the White Sox. That part is not surprising. We were expecting the Guardians to have a pretty healthy lead over the White Sox all season. But if you're a Guardians fan and you're looking at the standings, Jim, and it's the White Sox in second place, and Detroit is so far down the standings, you got to feel pretty good, even though there's still 110 games left, right?
Yeah. Who is was it Bob Nightingale? I'm trying to think who is the one with like the really premature declaration of a division winner. Was it for Seattle?
That sounds like Nightingale.
Yeah, just like congratulations with like the Seattle Mariners or something like where the fan base is me like, wait, what? And just wanted them to take it back. And so like, I'm kind of tempted to do the same thing with the Guardians of just saying like, well, it's not only their division to win, it's their division like put away by August, I would say. Yeah, they operate on thin margins to where they can never be overly comfortable, but they're also so comfortable that, like I said, they acquired Patrick Bailey and like they have 2 catchers who don't hit, and they're fine with that because like they just know what they can do better than any other team basically, and really lean into that. And like, yeah, sure enough, like, Tanner Bybee somehow 0-6 and they're fine. Like they can absorb setbacks, like last year, Emmanuel Clase, like you would think like any recipe for Guardian success involves like a heaping helping of him in the late innings. And then he gets suspended like, oh, they're fine. You can just swap so many guys out. And just because I guess the core is just good defense and switch hitting to where their offense may never be impressive, but their lineup is modular enough to where they always feel like they have a shot to score 4 runs in a given game. And with the way they pitch and the way they defend it, like that's oftentimes good enough. So yeah, it's they're Cleveland. At the end of the day, it's like some of the names have changed and they have a little bit more rookie excitement, but with Bazana and DeLauder, but like ultimately it's Cleveland still. It's Cleveland-shaped Cleveland.
There's Cleveland in the American League. There's Milwaukee in the National League, which that series between the Brewers and the Cubs. Oh, boy. Panic? Is that the correct word to say, James, in the north side right now for the Cubs after their last, 6 or 7 games?
I think it's more in the lane of angst, but certainly smells like panic at points. The pitching situation, like Edward Cabrera, blister and not, season-ending injury, but he's also kind of been off the whole time in a way that hasn't really matched your expectations. I think they're have a lot to worry about, both in terms of rotation depth and bullpen depth. One is probably a bit easier to address in totality at the deadline than the other. But I don't think it's necessarily like this team actually sucks now sort of mentality. That said, the Brewers do appear to be doing their thing again. And I know you wanted to talk about the AL Central, but I was going to talk about the Brewers if we were asked about the league, if only in this form of Andrew Vaughn has significantly more walks than strikeouts this year.
What do you mean by significantly? I haven't looked this up.
He's only has 43 plate appearances, but currently has a sub 10% strikeout rate because he struck out 4 times and has walked 6. His single season high in any White Sox season was 41 walks as a rookie. The fact that he pretty much after his rookie year was already pretty close, but after that, he never posted a sub 30 chase rate for the White Sox, and it's been I think it's probably averages around out to just barely over 23 as a Brewer so far. So if you're wondering what did they do, I would point to that number a lot and wonder how they did it. But even just talking about the AL Central, I remember watching Jake Bauers with the Guardians and being how do they ever think this is their middle order solution? And he's basically held the fort down while Vaughn was gone. So as much as the Brewers are this, talked about these no-hit wonders because they don't have home run power, they're definitely doing things offensively that merit observation.
Then I was going to bring up that the Rays are 15-3 this month. So the White Sox are emulating the right teams in terms of they're attempting to, in terms of just how do so many things go wrong or pieces get swapped out and yet they still know what they're about. So I think it's a good mindset to have. It's easier said than done because you look at the Mets and they hired David Stearns, who is supposedly the architect of everything the Brewers do. And then turns out that, that plus money is not necessarily a recipe for improvement. So yeah, it's when it's as sad as it is for a Chicago team to talk about, the Brewers or Rays or anybody else in terms of how little they have to spend. I think their brain's in the right place. Not necessarily, budget wise, but just problem solving wise. And just how can we keep a ship afloat while a Christian Yelich is down? The Brewers are great at that. When they starting pitcher misses time, they can cobble together either a replacement starter or a kind of a weird bullpen mix to where they use openers or multiple long relievers and swap them out. So yeah, great problem solving teams. I think would probably be the simplest way to put it.
Isn't Ashby on pace to win 20 games out of the bullpen this year for the Brewers?
8-0.
Did I see that ridiculous stat? Yeah, he's 8-0. He could.
Yeah, leading the league in wins from the bullpen.
that's his style.
I saw Jonathan Fever outduel Ashby in high A back in 2019, and I thought I was watching the freaking future.
And you were. You're just watching Ashby.
I
guess. In the future. Well, that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Let us know what's catching your guys' attention in the podcast comments on SoxMachine.com around Major League Baseball. What you guys are hoping for out of this series between the White Sox and the Giants this weekend, or if you have any questions about the Big Ten tournament, I'll be checking the comments and be able to answer those for you guys, as well as I continue to report out of Omaha. And James will be back in the press conference next week, press box, I should say, next week when the White Sox return home to Wright Field. But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Check out our videos. I'll have more coming from Omaha, as I'll be recording videos of Roch Cholowsky and other MLB draft prospects this weekend. You can watch those videos on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on Social media, we're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. If you enjoy our work and want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, and the upcoming MLB draft, you can sign up to be a subscriber at SoxMachine.com/products. Jim, the White Sox are still winning. Is that discount still available?
Yes.
So take advantage of it.
Back to 51%.
So
51 cents for 51%.
51 cents for your first month. And then the next month will be $5. But again, only 51 cents. So if you're not a subscriber, sign up at SoxMachine.com/products. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.